Hey, welcome back to howtofarmandgarden.com. I'm Joe Clark. It's been a while, and the reason it's been a while is because we had to adapt to COVID, so we've been gone a lot, so we didn't do a lot of work in the greenhouse, a lot of time for videos, but that's over with and we're doing that again. So today should be exciting because we have our great grandkids coming over and we're going to talk about corn. But before we get to that, I wanted to give you an update on some stuff. First of all, the biochar company, Genesis Biochar, is going really well. And some of you have been asking in the comments, well, what exactly is biochar? So I thought I'd take a minute and explain that to you. Biochar is horticultural charcoal, and it can be made from any kind of substrate, biosubstrate like straw, corn husks, coconuts, peanut shells. What we make ours out of is white wood chips, and it comes from a variety of white wood chips, and we're one of the only companies that it's organically certified. And what that means is that everything in the process, the water, the sources of the wood, everything in the whole process has been checked with the FDA and has been found to be clean. So it's certified to be that way. Now, to understand what biochar is, besides just being a horticultural charcoal, it's actually a stable carbon. And how that happens is we take that substrate and we cook it really hot over 1,000 degrees. And what that does is it takes that substrate and it opens it up and makes it into carbon. And that stable carbon won't break down for hundreds of years. So when you put that in your ground, and you put it down through the root zone, it's like populating your ground with mansions with empty rooms. And there's somebody out there with a loudspeaker saying, hey, come on in, I give you a home, a permanent home to live. So all the microbes, the biome that's there, the nutrients, it helps hold water because it's an absorbent. It is not a fertilizer. So I recommend that you take your biochar and you mix it with some kind of inoculation. It's really good to find a multi-input compost. Mix that about 50-50, keep it wet, let those open cells in that carbon absorb all that stuff. And if you're a farmer or a gardener who's growing stuff in pots, you can use your regular inputs and mix that with your biochar and let that saturate and inoculate, and you'll see a really difference, a big difference. This greenhouse now is over 5 years old, and the only inputs I've ever put in this are the inputs that I put in when I first started. And I rotate my crops through it, of course, so the ground is healthy. But if you get good, healthy soil, it'll take care of itself, as long as you don't deplete it by growing the same thing over and over and over and over in it. And like, you know, there's good gardening practices of taking nitrogen fixing plants like beans and legumes and putting those in after you have something like tomatoes or corn. So those are not things I want to get into today, but I wanted to make sure that you understood what Genesis Biochar is. And if you want to learn more, you can go to genesisbiochar.com. So there's been some questions in the comments about food production in the winter and things like that. This system, and there's videos on howtofarmandgarden.com already that we've done about how this system has been put together in this greenhouse. But basically it has a climate battery under it, and then it has a solar collector system that goes down in the ground with 300 feet of PEX. That heats that PEX up, which heats the ground up like a battery, and then that has air tubes that go through it, and then we use those to go into the shipping container that's connected to the north side of the greenhouse. And with growing lights, you can grow all year round inside that environment. Also, the zone heating that we talked about or zone growing that we talked about in some of our videos, we're still doing that when we're here in the winter. So we just take our planter box and we cover that up with plastics, run the climate batteries in and out of each end of that, and that's running about 60 degrees all the time. And so we put backup space heaters in there, in case it gets too cold. And it does get cold here in Montana. In December, January, February, it can get well below zero for not very long, short periods of time. Of course, you know, with the weather changing like it is, we never know. And you know, the hardest thing about a greenhouse, if you've ever had one, is to keep it cool. And here in Montana, we've had some really unusually warm weather this year, but we've been able to keep it cool. What I do is just leave the doors and windows open when I'm home and put the climate battery, and there's an earth tube back here in the back side of the shipping container that help keep the greenhouse cool. But pretty much the greenhouse is working. Even the watering system is all automated. So as you can see, we've been eating tomatoes and beans and peas and other things out of here for about 2.5 months. And that's pretty good for Montana. And we expect to be still using and eating stuff into here well into December. But our garden is doing really well. And we grow a lot more food than my wife and I, even with the grandkids over and the grandkids, that we could ever eat. So we grow a lot of food so we can take that and give it away. And a lot of it, hundreds of pounds of tomatoes, potatoes, and other things go to the local food bank. And I'd encourage you to do that. And I'd encourage you, if you have kids, get them growing things, even if it's just one pot and a tomato plant or some lettuce or something. Help them to understand how that whole process works. The other question I've been getting is, well, are the farmers still using glyphosate, Roundup? Well, yes, they are. So again, there's 70 crops that the FDA allows to be sprayed with glyphosates. And what they're doing is they're using them at the end of the life of the plant to desiccate them, to kill them. Like if you were to drive through southern Idaho where they grow all the potatoes, in the fall you'll see that all the fields will be brown. That's because they kill the vines with glyphosates. And here locally, the farmers are growing a lot of canola for fish food. But they spray glyphosate on that canola at least 3 times a year. And just recently they sprayed glyphosate. There was a lot of weeds in the crops, so they sprayed it. They use glyphosate to dry the crop because it's easier to harvest. Well, I can't hardly blame the farmers for finding a easy way to harvest their product or to be able to get more yield. But the problem is that especially in grain crops or potatoes, sugar beets, things like that. Sugar beets aren't so bad because they cook that so much, but potatoes, they take those potatoes, spray them with glyphosate. That's a root crop that goes right down into that potato, or into the bean or into the canola or peas, and then that goes right into our food system. So I'd caution you to think about that when you eat. Know your farmer or grow your own. That's what I'd recommend. Now let's go have some fun with those kids out in the garden. Okay, you guys, come on out. You guys got to pick some corn the other day, right? Yeah. So you're kind of familiar with it, but we're going to have a test and see how much you can remember. Okay, so who can tell me what this is? Cornstalk, good. And what are these? Roots. Does anybody know what these tiny little things are here? Okay, these are roots, but they're called brace roots. They're like fingers and legs. They go out so it keeps the wind from blowing over. That's called a brace root. These little things here, does anybody know what these are called?
The brace?
Well, that's what they do, but they're called nodes. See them up the stalk? Yeah. Of course, these are called what? Can you tell me, Zai? What's this called? A leaf. Good. All right. So the corn grows out of a what?
Corn grows out of a corn stalk?
Right, out of a node, right? Okay. And some corn has just one ear and some has 2 and some has more. Depends on how it's grown and the variety. Who can tell me what this is?
Those are the seeds. The seed, the wheat.
Tassels.
Tassels.
What do the tassels do? Yeah?
They catch the pollen and sprinkle it on the corn hairs or
Almost. And this is the male part of the plant, and it produces pollen. What does pollen do?
It fertilizes and it helps the
You're right. This is the female plant part of the plant, and it produces pollen, right? That is not right. This is the male part of the plant and produces pollen. Okay, the pollen falls down and it gets on top of the ears, and what's this stuff called?
That's called
Silk.
silk.
Okay, so what does the silk do?
The silk, it catches the pollen and fertilizes and it spreads it throughout the corn.
How does it do that?
It goes inside of the corn and it makes all the juice and stuff.
Okay, that's not quite right. Aria, can you remember? Okay, so each one of these silks, each one of these hairs,
It goes down to each one of the little
kernels. Yeah.
It helps it grow. That's what
Okay, it doesn't help it grow, it fertilizes it. The pollen comes off the top, off the tassel, comes down, lands on the silk, and the silk, each one of these little strings goes to one of the kernels and it pollinates it, okay? And then it grows into the kernels, right? So what's this called again, this part right here?
It's
Node, 1, 2, 3, node, all right. And these are the 1, 2, 3 roots. And then this is called a brace root. And this is a corn stalk. All right, there's a lot more we could learn about it because there's a lot of different kinds of corn. So who here can tell me how to check to see if the corn is ripe without picking it? Oh, raise your hand. Let's try one of the littles here.
You peel one of those off, and then you
One of those what?
peel.
Okay, so that's good because we missed the part. What's this called that goes over it?
The shuck.
The husk. When you take it off, that's called husking or shucking the corn. And there's really some differences between the two, but we won't get into that today. So we don't want to ruin the corn if it's not ripe, do we?
So we put in our thumbs inside the corn and we open it to see if, and then we feel it, the juice. If this juice comes out and squirts, that means it's ripe.
Okay, that's correct. So you open a little bit of it to see what it looks like, right? And then if it's not ripe, we close it. And Arya, what do you do to see if it's ripe?
You open it with the husk with your thumbs, and if it's white, it's good. And if it's white, it's bad. It's not done yet. But if it's yellow, it's good, and you can pick.
Okay, sometimes there's white corn, and sometimes there's multicolored corn, even purple and blue and red.
You need to stick your thumb into one of the kernels, and if it squirts, then it's.
So like this, just squirt it like that. Woohoo! It squirted. What does it mean if you can't get your finger in it?
It's not ripe.
No, it's too ripe. It's tough. It's there for too long. Good job. Okay.
for, Jasper and Zai? You
So
know
he
why?
can swim.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he can swim.
Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of fun today. We're gonna attempt to make a squash horn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna find one that's kind of big.
Yeah.
Okay, so these things are kind of hard on the hands. Do you have some sandpaper there?
Yes.
So we'll take this and just take some sandpaper and take some of these prickly things off there so it's spinies. That's easier than scraping it off with a knife. Now it's hollow, right? All the way up to where this leaf goes.
Oh, yeah, that's way softer now.
So we're going to take that and cut it off. And we're going to go just past where it starts getting, it's not very far like that. And then we're going to, we want to go like this or we want to go like that?
Like,
Let's go like that, okay. Okay, we'll take this and cut this just a little bit. Then we should be able to put that over our mouth. That's not working. Why is that?
Maybe we need to cut it a little bit.
Maybe. It's a failure.
We made it up.
Well, I think it worked. The principle is good. All right, we'll have to try another one. So you guys can find your own.
okay.
Joey, you can cut one yourself. Look at me. So when somebody hands you a knife, you say thank you before he lets go. Got that? No, you have to cut it way down at the bottom. Clear up in here. Get a great big one. Oh, there's another zucchini. Is it big?
Missed it?
Yes. No. You have to pick it. You have to cut it right down here at the bottom. There's a big one right here. Set it over there, please.
Whoa, I'm Papa. Can I have that paper? Then can I have it up too? Thank you.
You can close that knife while you're doing that. That or let the littles do that.
Now let him the knife.
Okay, did you cut this? Did you leave this in solid? No, so all it is now is a big tube. You have to cut it where the leaf is solid. Remember?
Oh.
Look at this.
You can try to do it. Try it.
Look how tricky that was.
Let's see. No, make the cut in it. Got it?
I'm just gonna
There you go.
use mine. Let me see it.
Nope, that's not working.
Look at
This is the zucchini band. They're going to play music from zucchini stalks that they got out of the garden. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Horns up. Play. We had trouble making these squash horns today, and I just tried another one. I think all we needed to do was to hit this a few times so it would stay up. It works good. The kids all had fun today, especially making those squash horns. We finally got those to work. Anyway, thanks for spending time with us, and until next time, blessings.